Oh, I have got to laugh at that music. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Bruno, and this is Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius. We have lots of geniuses here, including my partner in crime, Dalia Algazar. We have Liz King Caruso somewhere in the background. And with us today to talk about event industry trade media is Danica Tormohlen with TSNN and Michael Shapiro with Northstar Meetings Group. So we try to, be careful in our selection of who we could bring on to talk about this subject. I know you guys, I've known you for many years, just doing the same things and showing up at the same shows. And I trust you both to talk, honestly and openly about sort of the changes that have come about in the industry and also the work that is still left to do. And I just have lots of questions, having dipped my toes in and out of the journalistic, job description now and again over the years. And I wanted to start with, first of all, how the media has changed. When I look at some of the content, I think that these are the same articles I've been reading for 30 years, but feel free to say that that is not true, that there's a lot of other new things to talk about. And I want to start, Danica, with you first, with your new job, which is fantastic. I can't think of a greater organization other than Northstar that you could have picked for this sort of twist in your career. But what do you think has changed over the years that you've been, as a writer, as a editor, as a, now seer of all things content? I can't hear you.
There we go. Sorry,
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
It could just be me needing hearing aids, but
yeah. So I started in the industry in 1994 on a magazine called Expo Magazine, and it was print. And, I realized yesterday I was listening to a podcast that talked about Google celebrated 25 years yesterday. And, that was pre-Google even. So, print was the way, it was my degree was in print. Magazines were thick at the time, tons of ads. And so it was a completely different landscape than it is today. And, I think the industry has really evolved. I've been through lots of different ownerships from different media companies, and events have ramped up in terms of as part of the media mix. I'm sure Michael will say the same thing as well. It has. We have video, we have social channels, we have some of the content is the same because some of the jobs are the same that show organizers do. It's still about attendance, promotion, exhibitors, selling exhibit space, venues, cities, the experience. But there's been so many changes on the technology side. I think that that's a big way that it has evolved. When I think back, I was trying to think back last night, and one of my first jobs was as assistant editor. And I remember I used to go literally through the mail to get news stories. Now it's like, I spend my first hour every morning reading online all of the news about what's happening in the industry, and then also in, out there in the world. And, you get that instant. Whereas, I used to wait and like literally go through the mail with a highlighter and put a stack of, story ideas. And so totally different now.
Michael, what do you think? What's changed?
Well, first of all, I want to go back and you said you had to be very careful in who you picked to be on this. I'm wondering, what makes us the safe choices, and
Well,
What were we
okay.
There's
I'll tell you what it
nothing
is.
safe about you and Danica.
No.
That was
As
not
we
it.
choose all of our guests, smart, funny, pretty.
Yes, and able to dance.
Yeah. Dancing. There you go.
Great. I think our work is done here then. Yeah, no, I mean, what Danica said.
No, you're going to get an answer that's going to make you blush. So don't ask me questions. It's my job to ask you questions. Okay, snap it up.
See, it's usually the reverse for me. I'm not.
Yeah, I know.
You know, everything Danica said is true. I agree with that. In terms of reading the same material year after year, it's true. We are writing some of that same material year after year, and part of that is reflective of the industry needs. And I think in some cases, on some topics, we are stuck in some things as an industry. We need to advance more, but that's why it's important to keep talking about these things, right? I mean, it's weird to be phrasing things as best practice stories that were the same as the best practice stories we were preaching 10 years ago or longer, but it is an industry that is very large and fragmented and in some ways slow to evolve, right? So while our jobs are completely different than they used to be, the topics are, you know, we're hitting on a lot of the same themes, no doubt.
I want to add something really quick. So I think, you know, I mean, if I look at, I am still passionate about what I do. I am learning new things every single day. So, I mean, I don't report on the same things over and over. I report on new things every day. And so, I mean, that's how I use it as a gauge. I mean, I think that there is tons of new stuff and so many interesting things happening in the industry. And if there weren't, then I probably wouldn't be doing this.
Okay.
And to be clear, so I agree with that. We might start with the same general theme and story, but you can't just write the same thing you did before. You go back in, everything has evolved. The same people, well, some of the same people are saying the same things. We could probably recycle those quotes, but there's no doubt.
Innovation, disruption, digital transformation. Woo!
Yeah, I hear mobile apps are going to be great.
Mobile apps is such a thing right now.
Talk about trends.
The internet is huge, but yeah, no, I mean, it's true. Some of the fact that I'm learning something new every day, just like Danica said, is that our jobs are changing so much every day. The way we are approaching this is changing. You know, it's stuff like just using different formats to get that information, using AI as a tool. So these topics, you know, there's another one. We've been talking about AI changing the world for, you know, at least a dozen years, right? But now we have different examples to point to. We have different use cases. And that's true of a lot of different kinds of technology and topics that we're talking about in the industry, right? The theme is starting from a similar place, but we are looking for different examples in the way people are using things.
So I think that what you're saying is that the content has remained relatively stable and same and stuff like that, but you're regrinding the sausage differently. What I wonder is there's no edginess to it. There's no controversy that's ever brought up. Is it because there are sort of sponsor or advertiser overlords pushing your editorial in a certain direction? The one and only time there was anything even controversial or edgy, maybe you guys will remember this, was when Rachel Wimberly did like a series on a fake show that was launched, and how this fake organizer collected money and sold booth space and all of this stuff. It was for whatever was before, you know, the one publication that Reed owned, anyway, that she worked for before TSNN. That was like the one and only sort of controversy that was there. Why don't we do that? It points to what you're saying is you're writing about what the industry is telling you. But why aren't we writing about where to go, how to lead with our publications and content? And that maybe might involve.
Do you want to take that one first, Michael? And I have lots of thoughts on this.
I do, but I feel like you started from one place where you talked about it not being edgy or controversial, and then you sort of took it somewhere else with writing about where to lead. So in terms of not being controversial, that's interesting because there's a very wide spectrum of what people define as controversy. And I can point to a lot of feedback from audience and even our own sales team about things that are controversial that we're covering that maybe you don't see as edgy because you're coming from a different place. So I think that
maybe we need some like graphics that says this is edgy, this is controversial over here.
You know, anything that relates to a political topic these days is controversial, right? So, and we're certainly not shying away from that and how it's affecting the industry and how it affects people's site selection decisions, you know, and that's just the beginning. So to say that, you know, there isn't any controversy is, I think it's impossible to avoid that these days, even if we wanted to. And we're definitely not trying to. In terms of, I'm gonna go in one direction with this. I don't know if it's what you were thinking, but in terms of, you know, like the sponsor overlords or keeping things safe, we have editorial independence. So we're not reporting things according to what the sponsors deem newsworthy or important, but we are, as an organization, like our goal is to be very fair in how we're reporting things. And so we're editing each other. We are making sure we're not saying something that is out of line or untrue or exaggerated. And so that is going to look different from someone who's blogging and just really trying to get, you know, post something that may be a little incendiary just to get people talking about it. So we might, you know, you might do a LinkedIn post designed to elicit that kind of response, but it's not the same thing as a news story that you're doing where you're trying to be very balanced. You're going to call people out and still talk about the controversial topics, but you're trying to present both sides, if there are two legitimate sides to a question, and you want to make sure you're not misquoting anyone or misinterpreting any of the information. Now, I don't know if that's exactly where you were going with the controversy question, but
it's a fantastic response. Danica is just like itching to get into
go.
Danica.
Well, okay. So, for instance, yesterday we ran a story on the strike in Las Vegas. You know, despite the fact that, you know, it impacts 3 of our, you know, the largest companies in the industry, Caesars Entertainment, and who are advertisers on our network, MGM and Win and Encore. You know, it is newsworthy, and, you know, we try to be fair and balanced and, you know, report on the industry news. We aren't here to be sensationalist. It is business. This is a business press. It's not, you know, the you know, like National Enquirer, or, you know, we're not here to be sensationalists. We're here to report on business. And I mean, during COVID, I had to write some really horrific stories after 9/11. I mean, I feel like I have not shied away from being controversial at all. You know, I mean, could there be, it's funny, you know, in the past we've written where there's been some, you know, controversial things, and they do get hits. I mean, but we're not like, you know, it's not, sex doesn't sell for business publications. You know, it's mostly about, you know, business issues that people have. And so I feel like we cover that really well.
So, but Michelle is report. So despite, you know, what the controversial topics that we're covering, Michelle is, you know, wishing that there was more sex, I guess.
Actually, from what I remember back in the day, there was a lot of sex going on. You know, it just wasn't on the page. That's all I'm going to say. At least in trade shows, that's all I'm going to say. Anyway.
So what did Raina just say? I missed that quote.
Yeah.
Raina had a really good point that unless people tell you guys what's going on, you can't really write about it. And you have to really, you know, dig a little bit deeper. So sources count. I don't know. Dahlia, what do you think?
Well,
It seems like everyone else is sexing it up. But, you know, if you go on LinkedIn, there's a lot of folks out there that are really, you know, printing whatever is, you know, they barfed out onto a page and in other social channels. How do you compete with that then? If this is the hill you're going to die on, Danica, that this is trade media, this is the way we roll, what about the competition that's coming from bloggers and other people that are getting eyeballs?
I still feel like, you know, that we need to be, I feel like I'm a journalist at heart, and that I need to be fair and balanced. And that means, I mean, I sometimes post things to LinkedIn to get some reaction, and or on Twitter as well. But, you know, in terms of a story that I'm covering, you know, it has to be, you know, it has to be fair and balanced. And, you know, I still try to tackle those things. And they're going to have their audiences, people who do that. And it just is, you know, trust but verify is always my motto. And, you know, consider the source. So who do you trust, and what experience do they bring to the table? And so, you know, you can get your information from a variety of sources. And I hope that, you know, you will turn to Michael and myself, and in addition to other people. So
just to keep it straight, we definitely tune into you and Shapiro. So, I mean, and that's not just because you're on the show. You are our, like, you're up here, right? So that there's no quite up here. Like, there's no question about that. I think my question, though, about event industry media is, although we keep harping about the same topics, sustainability, technology, innovation, you know, meeting design, especially post-corona coaster, what I think is hard to find sometimes within the stories, within, you know, the journalism that we are consuming. And I tend to also gravitate to thinking of the newbies that are coming into the industry, where for them, this is like, I need something new. I need something to steal. I need something to, like, you know, was it a shit show? Are they not telling me what I need to do so that I can do something a little bit better? And I know that before our conversation here, it's like you go and you get to a show, and Danica, I tell you, I love your selfies, big smile on the airplanes. And I like, where's she going next? Like, where's Danica going to be, you know? And I know that you're going to go somewhere where you're going to nail it in covering it. But then stuff happens. Like, it's not all beautiful. And there is a shit show happening behind the scenes. And we have been to plenty of shows where, for example, a mobile app doesn't work. Well, for the love of God, like, how many times do we have to go back and say, it's those elements that you have to keep focusing on? I never see that in the stories. I see the good, but I never see the bad and the fugly.
Yeah, it's always about, oh, you know, the most recent trade show has been like just the greatest, and whatever numbers are available that look the best, and, you know,
and I think
walking to it was amazing, and then you hear on the ground it was like, that was a shit show.
But here's the other thing. It's, and it could be the stories, and I'm not talking about the two of you. So this is just for discussion purposes, where it's like the focus is, until now, we are back to numbers, and we are back to the shows as they were in 2019 and in 2018, where I'm like, we count on you to help us evolve and push us out of the shit shows. So this is where I'm saying, how does that come into play? Like, with the event organizers or the venues that you are covering, or even the technology, you know, partners or those that are involved into the event. And Rachel Stefan, another curly-haired friend of ours, share the epic fails and the lessons learned. And I think that's maybe the controversy that Bruno was talking about. Like, where are the failures. We want the failures, not only the beautiful ones.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the failures, and we've done in the past plenty of stories, about pitfalls that can happen, but it's difficult for the people who are involved to talk about them right away. And so if you're reporting just on the failures, then you're in a situation where we're supposed to be serving the industry with our content. We don't want to be in a situation where we're going around and looking for the bad stuff to report on right away.
Absolutely
So
not.
I totally agree. There's value in talking about the failures, but usually that comes later because it doesn't.
Reflection. Yeah.
And they've left the industry.
Called out for it, right?
Or got bought by Cvent. Either or. No, I'm kidding. Or Informa.
Well, for instance, we recently reported on the issues at Burning Man from as a blog post from somebody in the industry. I saw someone to be unnamed that wrote some sensationalistic things on social media, and without telling the full story, bagging, being very judgmental about the show organizer or the event organizer on that. And then, there was somebody that was on the ground who was an event organizer from former Freeman executive who gave the story. I mean, it is hard. I can't, that show organizer is not going to talk to me to tell me the full story. And people it was blowing up on social media in the general press about, the conditions that were there. And so, you have to be fair and balanced. And again, I'm just going to be repeating myself there. And this morning, for instance, I had an interview last week with Martha Donato, and I asked her to share her failures and successes. And she did, that, like Michael said, reflecting back on 33 years, it's getting people to say those things. When it's fresh, it's tough to do. And while I'm on site, a lot of times I will tweet exactly what is happening. But then is it a story, or is it I'm just sharing my experience on site? And so that's the best that we can do. And then pulling. I mean, for instance, I wrote something about Dreamforce last week. I wasn't there, but I, looked at tweets that people were writing and tried to get the vibe and the feel of the event and used actual tweets or quotes from the event. And that's, the best that we can do to try to, I want to present a full scope of a story and an experience at a show, not just the good version of it at all, because that isn't the full story. So that's my thoughts.
Let me ask this. Who now are you trying to reach? Because there's multi-generations coming into the industry. And how does one do that as a journalist? And also, are we only talking to planners all the time because they're the subscribers? Or can we also talk to suppliers and tech companies and maybe HR people and other people that are actually involved in the industry besides planners? So who is your sort of persona that you're thinking about when you're thinking about editorial content or you're actually writing something?
Well, the audience is the planner. So, that's who we're writing everything for. It is geared towards, the buyer, the planner. We certainly talk to plenty of suppliers and quote them and get their perspectives on the things that planners should know for doing their jobs. It's pretty straightforward about who the audience is. The audience, as you pointed out, though, is big and covers a number of different generations and levels of expertise in terms of, well, Dahlia mentioned all the newbies. That's one of the reasons we're still writing some of those same stories, because there's a need for some of that basic information as well. Writing any technology story is a challenge because people are all over the place with their knowledge of how things work.
That will never change.
Right. It hasn't.
Especially now at the beginning of this next phase. It's like
that's never going to change. Well, so let's talk. Let's see how we can help the planners from your perspective. So you have event organizers, event planners, they're doing their best. They want to put a kick-ass event together, etc. And they want coverage from you, both of you. What are the top 3 to 5 quick tips that you would want them to like have in their mind if they are inviting media to their event?
They're inviting media to their, so the events that we would go to cover would be events for planners. You know, we get pretty meta here, right? So
yeah. So like say you are going to Dreamforce or Infocom or, you know,
but they're not getting in. Are you getting invited to like the Infocom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes,
Dreamforce?
but yeah.
Yes.
Not always. That's not
so Shapiro, you're going to IMAX for the first time.
That's correct.
IMAX Vegas. I should be very
For
exact.
all this time?
For
Where
the first time. And guess where he's hanging out? He's hanging out
in other places. You know.
Danica's also going to hang out
He's
with
finally
us.
gotten his permission letter to the boss. Can I please go to IMAX down? I mean, he's like, it's taken 10 years to like, okay, they didn't like that phrase. I'm putting this back in. Now he's got it.
I refined the letter.
Yeah.
So say you are, you know, you're heading to Dreamforce, you're heading to IMAX. What would be the top tips for an event organizer that you would want them to have in their mind?
The event organizers who have invited us.
Yes.
So the idea is, so especially if we're going to a non-industry show, or, you know, like if Dreamforce is, you know, tangential to our main audience, right? So they need to know that what I'm looking for are the aspects that of what they use to put the show together, the new things that they are trying out for the first time, so that we can report on, you know, what the challenges were in implementing it, how well it went. We can see it, you know, see its implementation, you know, the successes and failures about that. And I think if a show is inviting us to show us that kind of thing, then they will talk about some of the challenges, right? And we can report on, hey, look at this cool thing. Here's why it might be difficult in these situations to implement this. Here's why it was like game changing in other ways. So yeah, I think I'm having a hard time answering your question exactly, but just keeping it in mind who our audience is and what the things we're looking for, so that we can share with them as a service what you did to put them together.
Well, and also they depend on you for your insights. So whether you're going to an industry show or a non-industry show, like or even a Burning Man that burnt down, no pun intended, kind of thing, they look to you for.
It didn't burn down; it got rained out.
I know, whatever.
Burning Man was silent.
All of you correct me. I love this. All right, and onwards.
Okay, so I will give you some tips. So
yes.
I would say have pictures available. You know, high-res photos available immediately. There's some different services. I did an interview earlier this week with a company called SpotMe, Spot My Photo, and they will send pictures immediately to your phone. And so things like that, like making it easy to report on the event, have statistics available on exhibitors, attendance, net square footage, tips for first timers, help me at the show, for instance, maybe have reserved seating in the front, tell me where I should be, and invite me to every single event so that I can be there to report on it. I think sometimes people forget and they just, assume that that you're invited to everything, or that you are nowhere to be.
Media conference room or media center the whole entire time.
And now there's hardly, those don't even happen hardly anymore. There used to be media lounges at every show, and now there isn't always. Make yourself available for an interview on site, a recorded interview, to go over, right then is when the event is top of mind. And, I can't tell you how often after an event that there's no post-show release, there's nobody available to talk or be interviewed for post-show recap. And that's when it's hot and fresh for the audience, and then also for them top of mind, so that they can share, you can feel the vibe and the excitement about the event, or, if there were challenges, what those challenges were. And, I think people are pretty understanding these days about challenges. We see, I could ask somebody, I would be more than happy if I got like the event organizer for Burning Man on a podcast, to ask them, I saw this, what did you do? How did you handle this crisis? So,
like, dude, it rained. What do you want me to do about it?
Yeah.
Like the fire guy. Hey, we had cheese sandwiches. What do you want?
I love those tips from both of you. I would also, and if it was me, I would say, well, how about we actually organize or schedule interviews with either a first timer or a 10-timer, or a first time sponsor exhibitor, and then someone who's been there for a while, especially pre-Corona coaster, post-Corona coaster. And, the most important thing is hang out at the bar and just ask people, how was the show for you? And that's the informal kind of interview that we always have. That I think
the most important thing, hang out at the bar and just
hang out at the bar, or
have a big like fedora on it that says press.
Fedora.
And start talking to you.
And Shapiro has a beret, so that works. But I think it's tapping into, and and this is very hard, but like you said, Danica, maybe the post show, and where everybody's like still in that excitement mode, or totally brain dead mode, because that sort of happens after a show as well, where you are able to tap into what was it like for the stakeholders or the event participants. Was it, an effective show? Was it a cool show? Are they going to go back? All of this, what really triggered like a great emotional kind of, like what David Adler says, did it give him goosebumps? Or did it tell them, no, thank you, I'm not going back, and that was a shit show kind of thing? So
nobody's going to print that I'm not going back, because that's just one person, and then we have to get the other side of the story. And
but so it's very different though. If we're reporting on a show and like the story is, this is an enormous show and it's a huge thing for this city, and if they don't do it right, it's going to be problems, then we're going to get quotes like that. Like if they did a lot of things wrong, then we're going to be reporting on that. But more often than not, the shows we're going to are industry shows where we're not necessarily reporting on how successful the show was. We're there to get the information that everyone's talking about at the show.
Right. But that's what the organizer really wants you to cover.
Yeah.
Like you said, come on in and see how we're making the sausage, and it's so beautiful, and there's unicorns and balloons here. But what they really want you to
disgusting sausage
is like, our biggest sponsor,
disgusting
with unicorns and balloons in it.
Yeah, no. What they want you to write about is all about our biggest sponsor and what the new products that they're rolling out. So you have to do a balance there of reality, and you want to be invited back, which leads me to the question: Are our industry journalists ever like blackballed? Like you wrote something bad and then that show organizer doesn't invite you back? Does that happen?
I know of one who was blackballed.
Really?
You do? I know.
From a very big industry show, and like was treated with like a cold shoulder and like whatever for the rest of the show. So yes, it has happened before.
I've been given looks and maybe a cold shoulder here and there. I don't think I've ever.
Is that about your reporting, you think? We got to sit down. We got to chat.
Did you? Yeah.
So
just the question. There was a question from the audience I saw.
Yeah, Dalia, the other Dalia, the cooler Dalia, is on as our genius in the audience, and her question is: how crucial is a dedicated interview spot? Like, do you need a spot to interview people, or can you just do it on the fly? Can you wing it?
It's very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. It's really helpful. I mean, sometimes it's great to have the show as a backdrop as long as you have the right equipment. But there are some shows, for instance, like Collusion that I've gone to before. They have like a beautiful stage set. Mobile World Congress has a really nice area to do interviews. There's a lot more that are dedicating space, even for podcasts and studios. It is super nice to have that available as an option, and it really will help, I think, get even more coverage for your event. If you, again, just make journalist job easier, right, to cover your event.
If there's a space where I can do a video or audio interview and actually be able to use that audio for like a podcast or a video with not just my notes, then yeah, that expands, exponentially the number of things we can do with that content later.
Fantastic.
So what do you guys want to cover, if you could cover anything? What's, if you could talk about it in any way that you wanted, without repercussions, without staying within your journalistic principles, like what are the topics? What is piquing your interest right now that you could just really say what you want to say? Not that you're not. I'm not saying you're not saying what you want to say. I'm just saying if you had total freedom, like bloggers do, like people on LinkedIn that can just talk shit, what would you talk about?
Well, see, can I back up before I answer that question?
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think having all of this content and having so many bloggers and having so many people sharing things on social media is good, and it has helped to change traditional trade media for the better too. I think that we can cover things with more authenticity and personality than we were decades ago because there's so much content out there. So
yeah,
we can cover things differently. The fact that what we're publishing is fair and not incendiary is standard, but we're still benefiting from the amount of content and the amount of honesty that's out there. I think it speeds us up. So that makes it harder, I think, to answer your question. I don't feel like restrained. Oh, I wish I could be really honest about this. But now I'm getting an idea for Dahlia's shit show in slow-mo. It could be like a series where we go behind the scenes.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Out all the bad stuff that is happening and everything someone's done wrong. We could change the name, so we can make it anonymous.
And your identities.
I see.
Yeah. Can do it, but
dark
you,
glasses.
I don't know.
Have a wonky voice. Wah, 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 wah.
How about you, Danica?
I mean, if money were no object, I would, like you just said, I would go to my bucket list of trade shows, every single one of them, and report live from all of those shows. I mean, that's not really possible, unfortunately. But I think that what is really interesting to me right now is that every industry, they've ramped back up, and events are where you get a pulse of what is happening in a particular industry, and it really, it is part of our economy. I mean, all of the things that are happening in every industry are just at the events are so interesting. And it really gives insight into, the up and coming companies, technology products, who are the movers and shakers in that particular industry. So, if that was if I could do anything, that would be what it would be, to really, look into every single industry trade show and report on, what's happening in that industry.
Because that's
what's
where the
one
stories
show
are.
you haven't been at that you want to be at?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to go to Dreamforce in person.
Yeah,
I've been to a lot of, I am lucky enough to go to quite a few shows. I mean, not as many as I'd want, but my bucket list is getting shorter as the years go by.
Perfect. Shapiro, do you have a dream show?
There's a bunch. I mean, like Danica said, I would like to go to Dreamforce. I haven't been to South by Southwest, but I've written about it. I haven't been to C2, but I've written about it. I would like to be in person at some of these shows that are, doing some interesting things that I've had the opportunity to write about, but not experience in person.
I mean, wouldn't you say that those are the shows, those brand shows, corporate shows, are where all of the innovation is taking place? around the
Some of
science,
it.
the art and science of events, a lot of them, as opposed to our shows that are just about our industry. Not bad mouthing them, but I'm just saying they have a lot of liberty because they don't have to make money, right?
Right.
But they do have great ideas. So it would be nice. I'm just advocating for both of you to go to more shows
Yes,
outside of our
we're
industry.
gonna reach out
Okay?
to our.
That's what we need to inject that, that something.
More
Yes,
time,
cool.
bigger budgets. Yeah.
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 Corporate
Okay.
events definitely do have a bigger budget typically. I mean, on a general, broad overview, I would say yes, they have more money to try new things, get people, like they had the Foo Fighters, most trade shows aren't going to have the Foo Fighters performing. Shutting down the city, being able to do, they do get to do a lot of things that other shows don't get to do, but it does eventually trickle down. What works usually trickles down to trade shows.
Perfect.
It's why they invented the internet, so we could Google who the keynote speaker is at our industry events. Like, I never heard of this person. Who are they? Oh, they invented, whatever, Jello, Anyway, Dahlia, take us out. Thanks, you guys.
Well, I love that this was a banter of some kind back and forth, but thank you for being on the show, and thank you for all the tips. And we're going to see you at IMAX in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I think. And you will be invited to be in the podcast corner because we have one with our partner virtual events group at IMAX. And Danica, you are also part of the North American chapter for Women in Events. So Women in Event Tech, Women in Events and Production, and Women in Events.
Women in Exhibitions.
Women in Exhibitions.
A lot of women doing stuff out there.
We're all getting together and having a meetup, and just for us to celebrate and to inspire each other. Shapiro, you're more than welcome to come as well. We have a
He's
ton
the
of
only
things
one that's been on Cut the Shit twice.
That's true.
You're the only one
you
right
have
now.
you have a badge. We're gonna put
Yes.
a badge of honor on you.
Thank you.
Lauren, we're gonna see you in Vegas as well. And so next week, what do we have going on next week?
TBD, girl.
TBD. We got TBD going on next week. And thank you for being on the show. Thank you for all our geniuses, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.